I knew that we were up there, but I didn't know that we had won until they announced the second place team, and it wasn't us. And I was like, oh my goodness, Dad, we just won this thing.
We're talking with up-and-coming California tournament angler Matt Luna on episode 67, brought to you by reelsandtackle.com.
Welcome to the Telltale Fisherman Podcast, where avid anglers share the story of their best fishing day ever to inspire yours. Now it's time for another epic adventure. So here's your host, John Woodson.
All right, welcome to the show. Today's guest is Matt Luna, who is joining us from San Diego, California. Matt, how are you, man?
I'm doing well. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah, it's our pleasure. And like myself, I'm in Orlando, kind of on the opposite side of the country from you here. We're both in our summer doldrums here, but hopefully you're still getting out and getting after some fish despite the hot weather.
Oh, yeah. I mean, living out here, San Diego or even just anywhere in Southern California, we get to fish year-round, and you might get a little bit hot here in the summertime, but it's never too hot to be able to get out on the water. That's for sure.
That's it. Just got to get up early and stay out late and maybe take a little siesta in between.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it can get pretty tough out here during the middle of the day, but those morning and afternoon, evening bites can be pretty fun.
Right. No doubt. Well, before we jump off into the fishing and, kind of what you're doing with your fishing career here at the moment, why don't you just take us back and kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and, where you grew up and kind of when you got into fishing.
Yeah, sure. So I was born and raised out here in Santee, California. It's the specific city that I'm from. It's a suburb of San Diego. Born and raised out here. My first love, sports-wise, was baseball, and I played baseball from the time I was a little kid all the way through college, and in the middle of all that, I would go fishing with my dad, and, we would rent boats out here at local lakes in San Diego and go fishing and kind of did my, learning along with my dad, and he would talk to some people at work that fished and bass fished, and we'd get information from the guys at the tackle shop and learned about different plastics and different baits that were out there and go try them out. And we rarely did very well, but for whatever reason, even in spite of that, I still learned to love the sport of bass fishing specifically. Yeah. And, I started playing baseball so much that I didn't fish very much. And once I got towards the tail end of college is when I really started to kind of get back into fishing. And then once I graduated and started off with my career, I got my first boat, which was a $3,500 nitro bass boat. It was a 1991, and I bought that thing. That was probably, 7-8 years ago I had that, and started fishing out of that thing. And that's what really kind of propelled me into wanting to fish a lot more. I started catching more fish, and I just started to love the sport of bass fishing that much more.
Right. So I'm assuming you got into the tournament circuit, doing club tournaments and that kind of stuff not too long after that?
Yeah, so the way that ended up happening is the competitive side of it is I actually met a friend of mine, Tom Lowry. He's a local San Diego fisherman and, dabbles in guide service and stuff like that. And I actually met him through selling a rod on one of the local fishing websites that has a classified section here in San Diego. And we just happened to meet up. He was going to buy a rod for me, and then we kind of developed a friendship there after that. And then eventually he was looking for a tournament partner. I said, hey, let's do this. And we started fishing team tournaments out here. And eventually I started fishing team tournaments with my dad and another fisherman out here. And then now I'm trying to, make this into a living and fishing the Pro-Am tournaments we have out west.
Very cool. So what circuit would that be that you're fishing, or circuits, if you will?
The team tournaments that I was fishing out here were predominantly National Bass West team tournaments, and they're kind of localized to Southern California. And now I'm doing the Wild West Bass Trail, which is one of the larger circuits that we have out here on the West Coast. We do have FLW tournaments, but we don't have any, Bassmaster or anything like that on the Pro-Am side out here. So we're pretty limited. So the Wild West Bass Trail's definitely been, something that us West Coast anglers are pretty excited about. We also have One Bass, which does the U.S. Open every year, and they're starting to branch out and do some more tournaments. They had a Pro-Am series years ago, but they stopped doing it. But now they're starting to ramp up their Pro-Ams as well.
Very cool. So are you doing those all now as an angler with your own boat?
Yeah, so I run a Skeeter bass boat, and I had different boats in the past. So I had my first boat, and then I sold that one and got another one that I bought from a friend of mine. And then once I decided I really wanted to embark on this, professional fishing adventure, that's when I really decided to buckle down, buy a brand new bass boat that had the warranty, and I had that peace of mind that comes with the warranty and comes with getting a new boat. And I knew that when I go travel, if anything happened, I could find a dealership, get it fixed, and it wasn't going to be, this gigantic, bill at the end of it, because everything should basically be covered under warranty. So if I went out of town and broke something, I would maybe be out a tournament entry, but I wouldn't be out a tournament entry and, whatever broke on the boat.
Right. Yeah, that's something you definitely got to think about, and you're hooking up your rig and traveling all over like that, putting a lot of miles on it. I mean, it's not just tackle and baits. I mean, you got to be thinking about hubs and bearings and trailer and batteries and all kinds of stuff. It's a whole nother world to keep track of, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. When you go out and fish and you're traveling, and even something as small as a battery issue can make or break some of your days on the water. Because if your trolling motor batteries go out and it's windy, you're going to end up having a hard time trying to run a pattern that you're trying to fish, or you may not even be able to fish certain areas because it's blown out to where you have to have a trolling motor in order to be able to fish effectively. And I did have some battery issues at a tournament out at Lake Havasu earlier this year, and it really kind of ruined the last half of the day. And I was already struggling in that tournament, and then having battery issues where I ran out of trolling motor power, just made it that much more difficult to try to put some fish in the boat.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So that was a lesson learned, I guess, on that particular tournament. Any other struggles from the road that that you've had?
So far, I've been pretty fortunate. I had a flat tire issue, and that was an easy fix because thankfully the boat and trailer I have has a spare. So there's I just had to put the spare tire on there.
Right.
It had air in it, and I was at a marina where there were some other people that were able to help me get the lug nuts loose and stuff like that. But I've been pretty fortunate in my fishing and traveling that I haven't had any major disasters. But kind of a funny story though, that from years ago when I was fishing out Lake Mead for the One Bass U.S. Open, I was fishing as a co-angler, and we were staying at this place called Temple Bar, which Temple Bar is way out in the middle of nowhere, and it's literally like I think 50 to 100 miles, round trip to get to the nearest town, like if you wanted to go eat dinner. So we were counting on this restaurant to be open, and all of us, at the end of the day, we come in from practicing on the lake, getting ready for the tournament, and we're assuming we're going to go to this restaurant that's there at the marina, and we go in there and the restaurant's closed. So all of us are like, what are we going to do? What are we going to eat? And we go, and they have this little like market area, and it has a microwave, and there's like, I don't know, maybe between 5 and 10 of us all hanging out in this market trying to figure out what we're going to eat. And they have some frozen foods, and you can microwave them with the microwave. And all of us are trying to figure out how we're going to be able to get this microwave to get us some food. And we ended up having to do that and sit in this market and take turns using the microwave. And funny enough, Rick Clunn was actually staying at the marina that we were staying at, and his wife and his kid were all in there trying to figure out what they were going to do for dinner and all that. And, that's one of the really cool things about the U.S. Open is, you're fishing against some really high level fishermen. Aaron Martins was at that tournament. Rick Clunn was at that tournament. This year there's a laundry list of FLW and bass guys that are going to be out at Lake Mead and this October fishing that event.
Cool. Too. Yeah. Now, from one of our prior guests that lives there in Nevada, we've heard a little bit about Lake Mead, and it's huge, right? I mean, that's a really big body of water, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Running water there is the name of the game. From my experiences, you don't want to spend too much time in one place, and there's just so much water to cover that there's nothing comparable anywhere around me to Lake Mead in terms of size and body of water. I mean, we have Lake Havasu and Lake Mojave, which are fairly large too, but Lake Mead dwarfs those guys.
Yeah. So how do you, I mean, aside from, going there and actually doing it and trying it, how do you prepare for something like that when you haven't seen a lake like that of that scope? How do you get ready for that ahead of time?
What I did is last year was the first time I fished Lake Mead on the pro side for the U.S. Open. I fished it in the past as a co-angler, but even then that was there was a 5-year gap probably between the two tournaments. So, I couldn't really count on what I remembered from years past because water levels can fluctuate and stuff that you did 5 years ago, you may not be doing now. So what I ended up doing, which I think helped a lot, was I took 2 pre-practice trips before the tournament started. So I went, these are months in advance where I went out there, I got familiar with the lake again, fished a bunch of different areas of the lake. And then when it came down to actually doing practice, I had 5 days of practice before the tournament. So I broke down the different areas of the lake. So basically Lake Mead has a bunch of different basins. There's a lower basin, there's an Overton Arm, a Greg's Basin, Temple Bar area. And there's other ones. And what I tried to do is break down those different areas and spend an entire day in those areas and develop different patterns. So that way I had different bodies of water that I could fish on the different days, because at Lake Mead, you want to be able to have as many different areas as possible, because as that tournament goes on, it gets very, very tough.
Right. So is that your general strategy when you approach a tournament, that you want to try and break a lake down into, or not maybe more than one lake if you have a river system or something, but you're trying to break it down into different areas and then dissect each one of them so you can know which one to go to based on the conditions?
Yeah, for me, depending on how much time I have for practice, I'll do that. But like, for example, I went up to Lake Shasta, which I want to say it's the largest lake in California. And that's at Northern California. And it was 10, 12-hour drive for me to get there. And I had no experience with Lake Shasta, never seen it, but I only had 2 days of practice for that tournament because there's off-limits rules for the Wild West Bass Trail, and we can only practice, for 2 days. Now, if you wanted to spend, if I could have wanted to take a trip earlier on before the off-limits period, I could, but I wasn't able to for this tournament. So I had to do the best I could with 2 days of practice. So what I did is I did as much research as I could to try to figure out areas of the lake that have produced over time, and then I just focused my time in those areas. And I struggled in that tournament, but I did end up learning a lot from that event. I'd never fished for spotted bass, and Shasta's primarily a spotted bass fishery. It has all 3, but you catch predominantly spotted bass. And so I learned a lot about how the spotted bass seem to group up, and if I go there for another tournament, I'm going to practice completely different.
So definitely a lot of learning when you first hit the new lakes, and just trying to get acclimated, and not only learning the best places to fish, but learning how to pre-fish and how to practice, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Because when I go to Lake Mead, I really am searching for areas where I'm going to get bit. Whereas when I was at Lake Shasta, you could get bit just about anywhere in that lake, but you couldn't find quality. So if I were to go back to Lake Shasta, I would be searching for quality fish rather than quantity of bites, because getting bit at Lake Shasta is not really the problem generally. You can catch a lot of fish there, but you need to find the quality fish, because if you're just catching fish at Lake Shasta, generally you're not going to be catching the right fish. I mean, 20, 30 bites a day is what you're looking for there, where at Lake Mead, you might be looking for 5 bites in one day.
Yeah, it really does test your skill going to all these different places that are such different fisheries to be able to figure them all out. Well, how about that? So, well, just tell us a little bit about how things have been going so far. Some highs and lows on the trail. How have things generally been going?
So for me personally, I've been struggling this last year. I had a good tournament at the U.S. Open last year. I was able to cash my first check at a Pro-Am tournament. I'd fished 3 up into that point, and I cashed a check at the U.S. Open, which was awesome. I was really excited about it. It kind of really lit the fire going into this season with the Wild West Bass Trail, and I struggled. There's really no other way to put it. I struggled in the events this year at the Wild West Bass Trail, and it didn't really discourage me. I just looked at it as a learning opportunity, because as long as I could take something from every tournament and use that going forward, I was okay with the finish. Like, obviously, I would like to do well. I'd like to cash checks, and best case scenario, you win that tournament. But like, realistically, going into it, I was taking it as a learning experience, because I knew that if I want to aspire to be a professional fisherman, whether that's fishing at the highest level or just being able to figure out a way to fish for a living, I knew that I had a lot of work to do. I knew that I had a lot of learning to do, and I had a lot of dues to pay, and I definitely was paying some dues this year.
Well, that sounds like a common refrain from all of the pros and aspiring pros that we've talked to here on the show, that it's definitely a steep learning curve, and there are a lot more tough days than there are banner days, shall we say, out there when you're first cutting your teeth.
Oh, for sure. Like, when I went to the California Delta earlier this year, I was doing my research, and I was expecting to go up there and use heavy line and flip and top water and do all this fun style of fishing. And I ended up finesse fishing, because that was how I was getting bit. I couldn't get bit fishing the reaction baits like I expected. I wasn't getting bit fishing some of the top water baits. I wasn't getting bit throwing a frog in the grass. And then you have tides over there that are really a factor as well. Your times to get bit are, based upon those tides, and there's just a lot of factors. So it was a really big learning year for me. I would go back to any of these lakes that I fished this last year in a heartbeat, and, try to fish against the best guys out west.
So now, have you had occasion to go elsewhere and, fish any of the famous lakes in Texas or the Southeast or anything?
Unfortunately, I have not yet. I would love to, get out there and go out to Florida, actually, and fish for some of those peacock bass and all that. Lately with ICAST, I've seen a lot of the guys from, Southern California that ended up going out to ICAST. They stay out there for another day or two and go offshore and fish offshore, or they would, go fish for some of those peacocks. So that looks like something that really
Yeah. Well, we had a great episode a while back with Captain Kevin Cannon, who is a guide down in South Florida, Palm Beach area, who does that. And man, they catch those clown knife fish and peacocks and cichlids and all kinds of crazy stuff. It looks like a lot of fun. I haven't done it either, but I don't have as much of an excuse as you do. I just got to drive a couple hours to go to it. You got to fly several hours to come to it. So, but yeah, definitely something on my bucket list as well. Those look like just a ton of fun to get into.
Oh yeah, for sure. And for me, some of the more offshore stuff is kind of like the excursion type fishing that I've done, and that's even pretty minimal. Like, when I was younger, I'd go fishing with my dad. He had a buddy that he worked with that had his own Parker center console, and we'd go offshore and fish some islands, out in the Pacific Ocean and catch calico bass and stuff like that. And that was pretty fun, but I haven't done that.
Right. Well, you've got a big green fish you need to figure out and stay focused on for what you're doing right now.
Oh, for
absolutely.
Sure.
So, well, I'm sure as things progress and, you keep moving along up the tournament ladder, you'll find your way out to Texas and Alabama and Florida and some of these other famous lakes that we hear so much about.
Yeah, I would love to get out and fish Lake Fork or Amistad or Falcon or something like that. And you see all these different, FLW tournaments on TV or what the Bassmaster guys are doing, and you just see all these different lakes. And what I found in just traveling here, in Southern California, Nevada, and Arizona is when I get out of San Diego, it's amazing how much better the fishing can be. Like, I know California is known for these giant fish, but like when I go up to Northern California, just the quantity of fish that you can catch in a day is just so much different than what I'm used to down here, because we get so much pressure and our lakes are so small that the fishing can get really, really tough.
Right. I guess that could be a curse and a blessing, if you cut your teeth there and learn how to catch them under those tough conditions. That may help you in some of the lakes, when you're out there on the tournament trail. Who knows?
Oh, absolutely. I don't take any of it, for granted. When it's tough out here and I can figure out how to put something together, I just look at it as something that I can take somewhere else and use that down the road, because I know that fishing locally here is basically the foundation that I'm forming that's going to, hopefully help me as I go to all these different larger lakes away from home that I don't have as much experience on. So I really just try to go out, even when I'm at home and fishing lakes that I've fished, tons of times. I try to take something from those trips, try a new technique, or, grind it out on a tough day, just trying to figure out what I can do a little bit different that's going to put more fish in the boat.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So what are the next steps? What's your plan moving forward?
So my plan is to continue to fish the Wild West Bass Trail and the different pro-ams that I have that are somewhat close to me here in, the Southern California area, and heading up to Northern California, Arizona, Nevada, depending on the different lakes that are chosen for the different circuits that are around here. But, bigger picture, I would love to start dabbling in some of the FLW events that we do have out here. Like we have the Costa Series out here, and they do 3 tournaments a year. But we don't have any Bassmaster Opens to fish that are anywhere near here. So what I'd like to do eventually is branch out, fish some of those FLW tournaments, see where I'm able to, find myself at the end of one of those series. And then maybe at some point, down the road, try to maybe fish that FLW tour, or, try to fish some of the Bassmaster Central Opens that are generally around the Texas area.
Right.
And just start trying to branch out and try to get into some of those larger circuits and try to really, push to get better and better, as the years go on. Because I just know that this isn't going to be something that is just going to magically happen one day. It's going to be an active pursuit.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And even I think when you get to that pro level, when you're on one of those circuits regularly, it's still a lot of grinding. You're still constantly learning and adjusting, and I don't think you ever stop, from what I can tell.
That's been my experience. Is the fishing? It's not given to you. Like even these pros that you see, they're traveling, they're driving, they're flying, they're traveling like crazy, and I'm sure a lot of them would love to have somewhat of a normal life like a lot of us, where you're home a lot and you're not traveling, but at the same time, they were given this gift to go fish and compete at the highest levels and, make some money, fishing, where they, would probably love to have a normal life from time to time. And guys like me were just struggling and wanting to be able to travel and fish around the country and compete against, the best of the best.
Right. Right. Yeah. The grass is always greener, but I'm sure most of them, wouldn't trade it. When you're doing something you love, it's great to be able to pursue your passion like that.
Absolutely. And that's kind of where I'm at is if I'm going to work every day, I might as well work doing something that I love to do. And if I love to fish and I love to compete, and why not go for it? Because I don't want to be, years and years down the road and wonder what could have been if you would have just
what
tried.
If? Yeah, what if?
What could have been if, you would have just given that little bit more effort, if you would have just applied yourself that little bit more, if you would have asked that company to help you out, if, all that kind of stuff factors in. And I bring that up just because fishing's expensive. Anybody that fishes
yes.
knows that you can spend about as much money as you want on all this stuff between boats and tackle and travel and different, lures and all that. You can spend as much as you want. And, for a person like me, I don't have all this, expendable income that is just allowing me to go. So that's why, I'm doing the social media stuff, and I'm doing as much as I can in order to, develop myself as a personal brand and develop myself to try to be able to market for these companies, so that way I can get some help because I bring them value to their company and their business. So that way they can help me, to achieve my dream.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. And that's definitely what it's about, on the circuit. It's that give and take. And you gotta, come up through the system. Yeah. It's not just the fishing side of it, it's the business side. They have to go hand in hand, and we've certainly heard that too from some of the other pros and aspiring pros that we've talked to.
Yeah, and the more I pay attention to everything, is it doesn't seem like you need to there has to be a business aspect to fishing if you're going to make a living fishing, or else just living off tournament wins is going to be tough. So you need that outside support from different endorsements or different appearances or different seminars or whatever that particular angler wants to dabble in. But there has to be the business side, because we all have bills to pay. And, I'm sure most of those guys aren't going to be wanting to, not make a payment on their house because they didn't have
right.
a tournament.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. The wife unit wouldn't be too happy with that, I'm sure.
No, absolutely. And that's kind of where I'm coming from with the whole business side, is I'm trying to develop as much as I can outside of the tournament itself to bring value to different people, that hopefully, I can build a platform that even if the tournament side doesn't work out, which that's my dream and that's my goal, is for the competitive side to be my livelihood. But if that doesn't work out, then I would at least love to have the business side, and helping other people, whether it's guide trips or ebooks or, webinars or whatever. I haven't specifically figured that whole part out, but I want to build, a community of people that follow me and, what I bring to the table, so that way I can help people down the road. And, maybe that's how I fish for a living. Maybe that's how I fish professionally.
Right. Very cool. Well, we'll have links to all of your social media, and I know you have a YouTube channel, so we're going to post that with this episode, so people can find you and take a look at all that stuff. And we're going to take a quick break right now, and when we get back, we are going to have Matt share his most epic day of fishing with us. So everybody hang tight, and we will be right back. Hey guys, I just wanted to say a quick thanks to all of our listeners out there. If you enjoy the show, please take a moment to give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or Stitcher. It really helps us to spread the word so that we can keep bringing you the most epic fishing adventures in the world. Okay, we are back with Matt Luna and talking about his time on the tournament trail. He's an up-and-coming angler looking to make the leap to fishing for a living. Looking to live the dream doing that, and having fun doing it so far. So it's just really been cool to hear about all you've been learning and how that's been going. But we want to take a step back now and have you tell us about your most epic day of fishing. So just kind of set the stage for us, and tell us where you were and what happened that day.
The most epic day is really tough, because there's through my life, there's been multiple epic days of fishing for one reason or another. But I think the one that comes to mind is when I was fishing a team tournament with my dad. We were fishing, some National Bass West tournaments here in San Diego, one of the local lakes. And my dad and I were fishing as a team, and we were actually at El Cap, which is a pretty small lake out here. First thing in the morning, we go to this big main lake point, and I'm throwing a jig up on the bank, and it's December. And generally speaking, out here in December, they're not on the bank, but, it had just been raining. And a lot of times those fish will move up when the rain comes, because that water's rushing down the bank and those fish are there. So I'm fishing a jig on the bank, and I'm bringing it back in, and I get bit, and I set the hook, and it's a good one. and I'm getting this fish back to the boat. And that one, I want to say, was about 6 pounds when I got it back to the boat. We get it into the boat, and I'm looking at my dad going, we need to figure out how to catch some more fish today, because with this one, we have a chance to really, I don't know that winning was really what I was thinking about at the time. I knew that fish was definitely going to help us get there, but I knew that with that fish, we were definitely going to have a chance to do really.
Right.
So we're fishing, and we're going through the day, and we're picking off a fish here, a fish there, and you would think when you win. I think everyone thinks that when you win a tournament, you smashed them. But that's not always the case. Sometimes it's just 5 right bites, or you get that one big bite, and you're able to scramble and catch a few more that puts that limit together. And that's basically what this day was. So fishing-wise, it wasn't epic, but the fact that I won a tournament with my dad was what made it the most epic part of it. And, we're sitting at the end of the day. It's 1 o'clock. Our weigh-in was around 3, and we only have 4 fish. And I knew that 4 fish, even with that 6-pounder, wasn't going to do it. At that time, that lake was fishing really tough, and, years past, you needed, 20 pounds or more to do well. And, I had 27 pounds with a friend of mine out there, and we got second place. But at that time, that lake was fishing really tough, and I knew that we were going to need, around 15 pounds to really put us at the top. And I knew that without having 5 fish, we weren't going to have what we needed. So we're grinding away. And finally, around that 1 o'clock time period, we finally get that 5th fish. It was just a scraper of a fish, and that was it. We had 5 bites. We got those 5 fish, and we had our 5 fish limit. And we go to weigh in, and thankfully we got a picture of it, with all 5 of our fish, and we end up weighing 1475, just under that 15-pound mark, and we ended up winning that tournament. And I barely won, maybe by quarter pound, half pound. I don't remember exactly, but just the fact that I was fishing with my dad, we won a tournament, it was just, I would say that has to be one of the most epic days I've had, for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you definitely didn't know, you didn't have it locked up, for sure. Like you said, it was going till 1 o'clock, and you still weren't certain that you were going to catch that last fish, and that you'd have enough to win. But to scrape it out like that, man, that must have been kind of a nail biter.
Absolutely. I don't remember. I don't think we knew until they, announced who finished in second place, and it wasn't us. I knew that we were up there, but I didn't know that we had won until they announced the second place team, and it wasn't us. And I was like, oh my goodness, Dad, we just won this thing. And then they called our name, and it was pretty awesome. It was a pretty awesome day. We were both really excited, and it had to be. It's definitely, if it's not the most epic day I've ever had on the water, it's definitely up there. Because like I said before, I talked about the story. There's been other days that have been epic, but I've caught plenty more fish. I've caught more weight, but the fact that I was fishing that tournament with my dad and we won, it's got to be the most epic.
Yeah. So do you think it's more sweet to win a tournament like that when the weights are, really low and it's tight, or, is it, do you think it's more sweet when you have a big bag and come out on top? Have you gotten a sense for that? Have you had that kind of experience yet?
I think that winning regardless is one of the best things that you can experience as a tournament fisherman, because you have that competitive streak in you, and obviously second place, third place, those are obviously great ways to finish, but we all want to win. So I don't know that it matters whether it's grinding out 5 fish or it was wide open and you had 25 pounds. I think just the fact that you beat everyone else in that tournament makes it just as sweet. I know that going into a tournament, I kind of like when it's tough fishing. I like to know that the bite, I really feel like when it's tough, it seems to level the playing field. I think when it's, the fishing is really good, I think that's where, it kind of, I just feel like it makes it a little bit tougher overall to do well, because when it's wide open, somebody's catching them better than everybody else. And I just think it levels the playing field a little bit more when it's tough.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of what I was getting to. Does it feel more like it's skill when you win and it's tough conditions versus luck when you win and, everybody's bringing in big sacks, I was just wondering if you've had that experience, like when everybody's getting bit and everybody's bringing in, lots of big sacks are coming in, is it just kind of feel like it's luck of the draw, so to speak? I just happen to get the right bites versus when it's really tough and it seems like, really the guys who have that little bit extra skill are the ones that are able to pull it out. I don't know.
It's hard to say. I think that grinding it out, there's something special about the satisfaction of grinding it out and just doing that a little bit better than the rest of the field that was also trying to grind it out.
Right.
But if I look at the situation when I had 27 pounds in another team tournament and we ended up, coming in second place, I think the guys that ended up with 30 or whatever they had, I think that was pretty sweet too, that they ended up catching that quality of fish, and even though guys had 27 and 23 and 20, and I think that some of those epic days when the fishing is really good, I still think that's just as sweet at the end of the day because you're all on a level playing field regardless of in reality, because you're all fishing the same lake at the same time at the same day, and you figured out how to catch them better than everybody else. And I think that if that's the outlook that you have, I think it's going to be just as sweet if it's tough or if it's wide open fishing, because there's still that skill involved in, whether it's 30 pounds and you're catching, 6-pound fish average versus, 10 pounds and it's a 2-pound average, like you still caught the bigger fish. Like for me specifically, like if I go to the Delta and you have a chance of catching, the California Delta, and you have a chance of catching 30 pounds, or going to Lake Mead and you want to catch 10 pounds, like to me, if I can catch 30 or I can catch 10, to me it's relative to that lake.
Yeah, absolutely. Although I got to imagine a 30-pound sack is always pretty sweet, no matter what, win or lose.
Oh, absolutely. I think if you're catching 30 pounds, you're doing something right. And if somebody catches more, then you just got to tip your hat, because I think you just have to proud of yourself.
No kidding. It was their time. If you catch 30 and they beat you, more power to them.
Yeah, but I mean, some of the fishing out in Florida or out in California, I mean, those 30-pound bags exist and people bring them in, and it's just one of those special days that everything kind of aligned and you caught them. Yeah.
Matter of fact, the episode we have playing now as we're recording this interview with Don Eady, he's a amateur fisherman here in the Orlando area, and he won a tournament with a 32-pound sack on the Kissimmee chain here. So, I would be most happy with a 30-pound sack of fish on any day, even if it didn't end up winning.
Absolutely, I would be too. If I caught 30 pounds in a tournament, and you didn't win, I think you kind of go, I can't believe I just didn't win. I had 30 pounds, but I think you're still pretty excited the fact that you had 30 pounds.
No doubt. Well, those are the days we all live for sure.
It definitely makes it so much sweeter, because there's a lot of tough days in between, and those days that are special make up for those tough ones for sure.
Right. No doubt. Well, Matt, man, it's been a real privilege talking with you, and just kind of exciting to hear about, your story and how you're progressing. And I'll definitely be following you on your social media here. And man, just I'm looking forward to seeing some good things to come from you here in the future.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me on and allowing me on your show and allowing me to tell my story and what my goals are. It means a lot to have the opportunity to talk to you today.
Oh, well, it's our pleasure. And y'all definitely check out Matt's social media and Instagram and YouTube. He's got a lot of great stuff on there, and we'll be seeing lots of great stuff from him to come, I'm sure. So, Matt, man, tight lines and take care.
Thank you. You too.
Here at the Telltale Fisherman Podcast, we are looking to record the most epic fishing stories from around the planet. If you are listening to us from outside the U.S., we would love to have you share an epic fishing adventure from your country. go to www.tell.fish/guest to sign up to be on the show today.
This has been the Telltale Fisherman Podcast. Thanks for sharing another great tale with us. Be sure to check out the show notes page for more info on today's show and the gear we talked about. Keep those lines tight, and we'll catch you next time right here on the Telltale Fisherman Podcast.